After she finished speaking, she hugged Pax and quickly rushed towards the village. Meanwhile, the situation was very bad for the three people confronting the female ghost in the yard of Thomas's house. Robert lay in a pool of blood, his fate unknown. Deaf Granny was also trapped in an iron coffin by a female ghost. If it weren't for the shelter provided by the pine needles left by Pine Grandpa, she would have long been eroded by the ghostly aura. But the magical power of the pine needles is limited. Deaf Granny must break free soon. Once the power is exhausted, she will instantly become food for the female ghost. Owen's situation is not very good either. He could only barely support himself with the help of the blade until now. He glared angrily at the female ghost in front of him and said, "I have spent half of my life on the battlefield and didn't die there. Now, I am going to die in your hands, you beast. And I have also put Comrade Robert in danger." He then raised the large knife in his hand with difficulty, saying, "Today, I will fight you, you beast." The female ghost attacked Owen upon hearing this. Owen raised his knife to block. He happened to block the ghost's claw coming towards him, but now he was exhausted. The knife in his hand was instantly shaken away by this immense force. The female ghost took the opportunity to use Ghost's claw to grab towards Owen again. She directly grabbed Owen's chest with a claw. But the next second, where the female ghost was caught suddenly burst into a bright golden light. It continuously corroded the ghostly aura of the female ghost. This suddenly shocked the female ghost. She hurriedly retracted the ghost's claw. "Who are you exactly? How can you have virtuous deeds protecting your body?" Owen was also puzzled about what virtuous deeds protecting the body meant. He lowered his head to take a look. It turned out that the golden light was coming from the clothes. It was emitted by the three metals. The female ghost, upon seeing this, angrily cursed, "Damn these metals!" But before she finished speaking, suddenly lightning flashed and thunder roared in the sky, as if gathering electric power to strike at the female ghost. The female ghost was so scared that she quickly covered her mouth. The young lady dared not speak recklessly. She flew desperately to the iron coffin and pulled Deaf Granny out, then climbed in herself. Owen rushed forward to help the weak Deaf Granny. The female ghost took the opportunity to escape. Eighth Master sat on the ground watching the fleeing female ghost. Finally heaved a sigh of relief. The ghost was finally gone. Although Deaf Granny was greatly weakened, she stood up resolutely upon seeing the female ghost escaping, and was about to chase after her. But she was stopped by Owen. She only had half a life left. Even if she caught up to you, she wouldn't be able to do anything to you. But at this moment, the iron coffin stopped suddenly in midair. It turned out that hemp-clad Granny and Pax had just arrived. They blocked the female ghost's path. Seeing this, the female ghost angrily roared, "Who dares to block my way? Don't blame me for scattering your soul." But before she could finish speaking, the ghost sedan chair directly crashed into the iron coffin. In the next second, the huge iron coffin was instantly swallowed by the ghost sedan chair. From the ghost sedan chair came only the strange laughter of hemp-clad Granny. "Even I, hemp-clad Granny, am not recognized. How dare you be so arrogant? Today, I will teach you a lesson." Instantly, the female ghost's screams echoed through the heavens and the earth, begging hemp-clad Granny for mercy. After a while, the screams abruptly stopped, and everything finally returned to calm. Owen supported Deaf Granny, frowning as they looked towards the ghost sedan chair. "How come an even fiercer one has arrived? It seems we are doomed tonight." Eighth Master also stood up. "Hemp-clad Granny, why did you come to the village without informing us, the younger generation, in advance? We could have made preparations to welcome you." From the sedan chair came the ambiguous voice of hemp-clad Granny. "What are you preparing for? Are you preparing to team up with your brothers to deal with me?" Hearing this, Eighth Master quickly smiled and said, "How could I dare to have such thoughts, Granny?" On the side, Deaf Granny saw that hemp-clad Granny's visit this time was not malicious, and quickly stepped forward to resolve the awkward situation. "I thank you on behalf of all the villagers for your help." "No need to thank me. Thank this little guy instead." After saying this, Hemp-clad Granny gave a flick of her sleeve and securely placed the sleeping Pax into Owen's arms. They looked at the little one in their arms. The two of them suddenly exclaimed in surprise. How could Pax appear here? Hemp-clad Granny, upon seeing the situation, coldly snorted. You two, don't wake up my great-grandson with your noise. If it weren't for saving you two old fogies, my great-grandson would have been in danger today. He was almost eaten by the ghost skin paper man. Deaf Granny was very puzzled and quickly asked what was going on. She learned about the situation through Hemp-clad Granny's account of what happened. Deaf Granny was suddenly filled with a sense of touch. She didn't expect Pax to be so filial. But at this time, Pax was asleep, calling out Hemp-clad Granny's name. Granny, don't leave. Come to my house, I'll treat you to something delicious. Hemp-clad Granny was very happy to hear this. The more I look at this child, the more I like him. Seeing this scene, Deaf Granny felt a stir in her heart. Granny, why don't I set up a memorial tablet for you at the hall entrance? You can come visit Pax anytime in the future. Hemp-clad Granny cannot possibly be unaware of Deaf Granny's thoughts. With such a powerful ghost immortal present, the other worship of evil dare not touch the child of extreme. She then slowly said with both hands tucked into her sleeves, I receive your offerings, Deaf Granny. Doesn't this mean the ranking of this kid is above me? Before Deaf Granny could respond, Eighth Master on the side understood the meaning behind Hemp-clad Granny's words. She was referring to him. With Robert fainting on his back, he smiled apologetically and said, If Deaf Granny is lucky enough to receive your offerings, of course, I dare not rank above you. Eighth Master's words clearly had a great effect. Hemp-clad Granny was very happy upon hearing them. She waved her long sleeves, and a white ghostly aura flew straight into Deaf Granny's body. For the sake of that kid Pax, I promise to be your mediums of immortals. Afterward, just report my name as a spirit medium. Deaf Granny was overjoyed at the sight, and hurriedly expressed her gratitude with a big smile. No need to be polite. Pax wants you to call her Grandma. Let's treat each other as equals. In the future, you can just call me older sister. After saying that, Ghost sedan chair soared into the sky and flew straight towards Hemp-clad Mountain. Deaf Granny waved goodbye as she watched the sedan chair disappearing into the distance. Take care, older sister. Owen, standing beside her, was very puzzled by everything that had happened today. What is the origin of this person? She was even able to easily subdue the worship of evil inside the iron coffin. Upon hearing this, Deaf Granny explained with a respectful expression. She is a ghost immortal who has been practicing for 9,800 years. In another 100 years, she might achieve success in her cultivation. Owen was almost shocked to hear this. She is so powerful. It's fortunate that we have gained her favor. Owen then used his hands to stroke Pax's little face, saying, Our Pax is brave and sweet-tongued. He even called the creature in the iron coffin sister, let alone Hemp-clad Granny. Upon hearing the movement, Pax slowly opened his eyes. He murmured something about an ugly creature. The sister actually looks very pretty. Time flies, and 10 years have passed in the blink of an eye. To prevent feeling helpless when facing danger again, Pax practices the swordsmanship Owen taught him in the yard every morning. Over the course of 10 years of continuous training, Pax has grown exceptionally strong. At only 16 years old, he already boasts a muscular physique. At this moment, Deaf Granny walked out of the house. It's no wonder it's a dagger given by the Snow Corps General. Granny can even hear the sound of you swinging it in the house. You will be going to high school in town soon. You will be living in the school dormitory. Be sure to keep the dagger with you at all times. Upon hearing this, Pax put the dagger back into its sheath. While responding to Deaf Granny, he said, Don't worry, Grandma. Nothing dangerous should happen at school. But he didn't finish his sentence. The originally fine Deaf Granny suddenly had her eyes rolled back, started convulsing, and was about to fall to the ground. Pax looked startled and hurried forward to support her. Granny, what's wrong with you? At this moment, Deaf Granny's pupils changed into a strange black-green color. Her voice also became extremely sharp. Your son has real guts. He dared to shoot me with a gun and even fired 2 shots in a row. You'd better hurry to the West River and bring him back home. If you come late, don't blame me if he's already dead." After saying that, deaf Granny fainted again. Seeing this, Pax was very puzzled. Which of the mediums of immortals came to find Granny? Hurry, wake Granny up. Before long, deaf Granny slowly opened her eyes. She immediately yelled, "Oh no! Pax, quickly help me to the West River. Your Uncle Miles has caused big trouble." When Pax helped deaf Granny to the West River, they saw Miles lying on the ground, struggling for breath. Deaf Granny hurried forward. She helped him up, his face swollen like a pig's head. Looking at Grandma, who was extremely anxious, Pax quickly spoke up to reassure her. "Grandma, Uncle Miles is fine. He will wake up soon." Sure enough, after a while, Miles slowly opened his eyes. He looked innocent as he glanced at deaf Granny in front of him and said, "Granny, did I offend any spirits? I saw a yellow weasel earlier and wanted to shoot it. But even after firing 2 shots, I missed. The 3rd shot ended up backfiring." Deaf Granny was instantly enraged when she heard this. She directly gave Miles a slap in the face. The yellow weasel is a weasel immortal who has been practicing spirituality for many years. If it weren't for me, you would have been killed by it a long time ago. After saying that, deaf Granny had Pax help Miles walk home. While walking, she reminded them, "Remember to bring some offerings when you go back later. Apologize properly to the weasel immortal." But as deaf Granny and the other 2 slowly walked away, a weasel watched their retreating figures. "You dare to shoot me. This is not over." Just as the weasel was thinking about how to prank Miles, it suddenly sensed an unprecedented crisis and roared behind itself. Just then, a female ghost in a red dress struggled towards it and lunged. It took a closer look. It turned out to be the ghost that had been on Miles back 10 years ago. She grabbed the weasel by the throat. In the face of her immense strength, the weasel was powerless to resist and was lifted up directly. And this female ghost can appear in broad daylight, obviously indicating a high level of spiritual cultivation. She immediately forcibly absorbed all the considerable spiritual cultivation that the weasel already had. Pax sensed a familiar presence behind him. He turned around to look but found nothing. His actions were caught by deaf Granny. "Pax, what's wrong with you?" "I'm fine, Grandma." "No, you didn't see. The body of the weasel hidden in the bushes is now lifeless. The red-clothed female ghost is also nowhere to be seen." He thought he was just having a hallucination. After the 3 returned home, Miles, however, developed a high fever. Pax realized that the gunshot wound had become infected, causing the wound to be infected. Although it's not a big problem, the wound needs to be disinfected as soon as possible. Otherwise, the infection will worsen. "Granny, I need to go to town to buy some antibiotics. You can just wait at home." With that, Pax walked towards the door. Deaf Granny, however, looked worried and said, "It's tens of miles of mountain road to get to town. And you have to pass by a mass grave, Pax. Can you make it alone?" But Pax just turned back and waved to deaf Granny. "Don't worry, Granny. I will ask our neighbor Ian to accompany me." But deaf Granny was still worried. She repeatedly instructed Pax, "Be sure to bring the incense ashes pack your grandma gave you. No matter what sounds you hear on the way, never turn back and absolutely do not respond. Just keep walking forward." Upon hearing deaf Granny's instructions, Pax nodded towards his grandma. "Don't worry, Grandma. I remember everything," he said as he continued to walk outside. When Pax and Ian returned from town with the medicine, it was already past midnight as they passed by the mass grave. Flickering eerie green lights floated around. Almost every grave was adorned with them, giving off an especially chilling vibe under the moonlight. As the 2 walked forward, Ian suddenly asked nervously, "Pax, did you hear that sound?" The sound seemed to be calling our names. Upon hearing this, Pax also realized they might have encountered Dirt Ian. "I heard it too. But don't look back and don't respond." Once we pass this place, everything will be fine. But the two kept walking. Suddenly, there appeared a cave ahead of them, with a dazzling light shining. Eerie opera singing could be heard from inside. Upon hearing this sound, Ian's eyes became lifeless as he walked towards the cave. Pax said, "Someone is singing opera. Look, so many people, it's so lively." Seeing this, Pax quickly shouted, "Ian, come back quickly!" But Ian continued walking towards the cave, as if he hadn't heard anything. Pax, not caring about his own fear, hurriedly chased after him. When he caught up to the entrance of the brightly lit cave, his face was full of shock, as if he had entered another world, only to see a stage appearing out of nowhere in the cemetery. Two people with eerie blush on their cheeks were playing the swana. The audience seated in the front row are all dressed in traditional costumes. Their eyes are staring blankly at the stage. In the foremost position, there is a grand chair and a feast of delicacies, as if waiting for an important figure. At this moment, Ian is sitting in front of a table, eating pastries voraciously. Pax hurriedly grabs him and says, "Ian, stop eating. We need to quickly bring the medicine back." Upon hearing Pax's voice, the nearest spectators turned around and glared angrily. "Stop making noise and sit down to watch the show." Pax was suddenly startled. Trouble was brewing with a thud blocking the way. And with so many evil ghosts around, how can I escape with Ian? Even though Grandma's ash can ward off evil spirits, the limited quantity probably won't last long. Suddenly, a drumming sound rang out at this moment. Everyone turned their heads to look, only to see two little girls. They were supporting a gorgeously dressed old lady, walking past Pax. The old lady sat down on the central Grandmaster chair. She grabbed the food on the table and wolfed it down with gusto. In the end, she even felt like she was eating too slowly. She picked up the plate directly and poured the food desperately into her mouth. Perhaps she was eating too fast. The old lady suddenly had a violent coughing fit. Amidst the coughing sound, her head fell to the ground with a thud. Her mouth was still chewing incessantly. Her eyes were still fixed on the stage. Connecting her head to the old lady's body was an iron chain nail. Seeing this scene, Pax was startled and shivered. He couldn't help swallowing hard. But the old lady who heard the noise suddenly stared at him. Seeing this, Pax immediately thought it was bad. He had been discovered. However, Ian next to him acted as if nothing had happened, still eating the things on the table crazily. He didn't realize at all that everyone around him was a ghost. Pax saw that the situation was not right. Pax quickly pulled out 2 silver needles from his pocket. He inserted the silver needles respectively into his and Ian's biwi acupoints, muttering. When the needles entered the biwi point, it connected Ian and Yang. As soon as he finished speaking, he quickly grabbed Ian's hand and desperately tried to escape. Ian didn't know what was happening. Just as he was about to ask, Pax told him not to say anything. There was no time to explain that everyone here was a ghost. But just as the two of them panicked and tried to escape, a chain with an iron nail attached to it was rapidly chasing after them. Soon the iron chain wrapped around Pax's ankle. Being tripped up like this, Pax lunged forward directly. The bag of incense ashes in his arms fell out as well. At this moment, Pax only had one thought in his mind. This time it's over. The next second, he fell to the ground and passed out directly. One day later, Pax suddenly woke up from his dream. He shouted Ian's name. He came to his senses and realized that he was actually lying on his own bed at home. Has he returned home? Yes, he managed to save his life. He heard Deaf Granny's voice coming from beside his ear. Pax was very puzzled about how he came back. And Ian? Deaf Granny just smiled and patted Pax's head. Don't worry, Ian is fine too. After Pax and the 2 others left, Deaf Granny lit 3 sticks of incense in the temple censer. However, it burned into 2 short and 1 long stick. Incense is most fearful of such a situation occurring. Deaf Granny thought that something had happened to the 2 people, so she hurriedly sent someone to look for them. When the two were found at the mass grave, they were surrounded by incense ashes. Despite the presence of evil ghosts around, they dared not approach. The two people just passed out without knowing what had happened. At this moment, Pax was puzzled. He didn't understand why there were so many evil ghosts appearing in the mass grave. Although there were a few lonely spirits and wild ghosts before, nothing chaotic had ever happened. This time, it almost cost both me and Ian our lives. Pax took out an iron nail from his pocket as he spoke. "Look, Granny. This is the thing those evil ghosts used to attack us." Deaf Granny was suddenly shocked to see that they were death nails, used in mass graves. How could such evil objects appear here? Seeing Granny's serious expression, Pax also knew that this matter was not simply the work of an evil ghost. Granny suggested that we go and investigate, to see if we can find any clues. Before Pax could finish speaking, 8 female ghosts in red clothes appeared carrying a palanquin. The voice of the hemp-clad Granny came from the palanquin. "Pax, you rest well. Granny, I'll go see what exactly it is. Who dares to bully my eldest grandson?" When hemp-clad Granny arrived at the mass grave, although there were countless ghostly fires drifting in the wind, it was incredibly quiet. Seeing this, hemp-clad Granny thought to herself that these evil ghosts must be hiding. She immediately shouted, "All you ghostly beings here, get out now! Otherwise, don't blame me for destroying this mass grave." But despite her thunderous voice that resounded through the skies, not a single ghostly figure appeared. They seemed to have known in advance that hemp-clad Granny was coming, and did not show any response at all. Hemp-clad Granny was very angry at this. "You little ghosts sure do run fast. Since you've run away, then I can only go find the ringleader." She flew swiftly into the distance as soon as her words fell, leaving a lingering shadow in the air. After a moment, she arrived at the West River where Miles had met with an accident before. Inside the sedan, the hemp-clad Granny raised her left hand slightly. Immediately, a powerful ghostly aura burst forth from her hand. The ghostly aura dispersed around, probing for the presence of ghosts, but it was silent as if in a mass grave, with no movement at all. "Where did that damn yellow weasel hide? Come out now!" With a shout from hemp-clad Granny, the ghostly aura in her hand became even more rampant and spread around. The grass on the ground was pulled up by this powerful force. Suddenly, hemp-clad Granny caught a familiar scent. She suddenly shot out of the sedan chair and landed beside a clump of grass with a grim expression on her face. She couldn't help but fall into contemplation as she looked at the grass in front of her. Vaguely, she caught a whiff of the smell of a yellow weasel. She slowly reached out her hand towards the clump of grass. Next, a dried-up weasel appeared in her hand. This is the weasel that was previously drained of blood and energy by the female ghost in red. Hemp-clad Granny looked puzzled at the sight. This yellow weasel was obviously a Taoist immortal, so who near the weasel immortal could have silently sucked all its blood and energy dry? Just as hemp-clad Granny was contemplating this, suddenly, a loud shout came. "Stop!" Suddenly, a golden light struck. Hemp-clad Granny grabbed the weasel's hand. The weasel in her hand also slowly fell down. Just as it was about to hit the ground, a figure shot out and caught it, holding it in their arms. It stared fiercely at hemp-clad Granny and angrily shouted, "Even if my child has hurt Miles, you shouldn't take its life." At the mention of this, hemp-clad Granny's eyes revealed a hint of coldness. "I didn't kill him," she said. But the weasel took advantage and said, "It wasn't you. My son, who has become a weasel immortal, has now had all the essence of his blood drained. It must be the work of evil spirits. Within a radius of 100 miles, only you, hemp-clad Granny, have such cultivation." Upon hearing this, hemp-clad Granny couldn't help but let out a cold laugh. "I will never deny what I have done. Since you insist on biting me and not letting go, I might as well admit to this charge. I will catch you and cook you as a stew to nourish my son Pax." As soon as she finished speaking, hemp-clad Granny's left hand lifted slightly. Suddenly, a powerful ghostly aura burst out from the palm. The ghostly aura condensed into a giant ghost hand and grabbed towards the weasel. A loud rumbling sound was heard. Although the hand did not directly hit the weasel, the powerful energy wave caused it to be thrown back dozens of yards. It relied on its sharp claws to scratch several deep marks on the ground before finally stabilizing its body. The weasel was so angry at this blow that it gritted its teeth. Countless crimson eyes suddenly appeared behind it. With a roar, "Attack all at once! Whoever kills that old witch will be generously rewarded." However, just as the weasels were about to charge forward, Eighth Master suddenly appeared and stood between the two sides. "Stop fighting! There is something suspicious about this matter." Before Eighth Master could finish speaking, he was directly slapped away with two palms. "Roll to the side. The older generation's grudges are not something a little snake like you can mediate." Eighth Master fell to the ground and curled up into a ball. He then complained with a look of grievance. "I told you I wouldn't come, but you insisted. Can I really stop them?" Eighth Master did take these two slaps quite unjustly. At this moment, Deaf Granny finally arrived late. "Please stop fighting, both of you. I asked Eighth Master to come and mediate. There must be a misunderstanding." However, Deaf Granny's cultivation is too low. Both immortals remained indifferent to her dissuasion. Hemp-clad Granny turned to her. "Just watch the show and don't interfere. Wait for me to catch this yellow weasel and stew it for Pax to drink for nourishment." The weasel also coldly snorted. "This has nothing to do with you. You'd better not intervene." Upon hearing this, Deaf Granny became increasingly anxious. What should be done about this? If the fighting continues, it could lead to serious trouble. She immediately turned her head and looked at Eighth Master, saying, "Eighth Master, do you have any way to persuade them to stop?" At the words, Eighth Master just grinned. "Unless you find my eldest brother," he said. After saying this, Eighth Master wasted no more time and transformed back into his original form. "You must keep a close eye on them, and don't let them hit you. I'll be right back in a moment." And at this moment, in the dark corner, the female ghost in red clothes watched the two immortals fighting and emitted eerie laughter. Then she floated straight towards Deaf Granny's house. And inside Deaf Granny's house, Miles's daughter Alice was holding medicine when she arrived at Pax's bedside. But just as Pax was about to reach out to take the medicine, he suddenly noticed a ghostly figure appearing outside the window, greedily staring at Alice. Seeing this, Pax immediately shouted loudly, "Who is it? Who's there?" He abruptly stood up and shielded Alice behind him as soon as he finished speaking. Alice looked terrified when she saw her brother's protective stance. "What's wrong, Pax?" she asked, but Pax didn't answer. He just stared nervously at the window. But outside the window, it was completely quiet with nothing there. The mysterious figure had disappeared without a trace. Yet, the next second, half a head suddenly poked out from the wall. Following that, its body crawled out from the wall as well, revealing a creepy smile as it stared at Pax and another person. Seeing this, Pax was shocked. "Isn't this the red-clothed female ghost that was killed by Granny? How could she appear here?" Moreover, both Granny and Eighth Master are not at home now. What should we do? Alice was also scared when she saw a ghost for the first time and tightly grabbed onto Pax's clothes. At that moment, the female ghost suddenly let out a chilling, hair-raising shriek. Then it moved swiftly, and its slender ghost claw immediately flew towards Alice. But just as Ghost Claw was about to touch Alice in an instant, suddenly, a golden light shot out and hit Ghost Claw, causing the female ghost to retract Ghost Claw in pain and be thrown backward. The spot hit by the golden light immediately emitted wisps of black smoke. Pax's expression brightened upon seeing this. Grandpa Pine made a move. He quickly grabbed Alice's hand and ran towards the big pine tree in the courtyard. The female ghost looked ferociously in the direction where the two were running away. She then extended another ghost claw towards Alice in a critical moment. Deaf Granny and Hemp-clad Granny arrived and shouted loudly, "Where did this evil come from? How dare it run wild at the entrance of the hall where the 4 pillars and 8 columns of the immortals are enshrined?" Upon hearing this, the the female ghost was suddenly shocked, as if she was very afraid of hemp-clad Granny. She hurriedly transformed into a green light and disappeared. Hemp-clad Granny couldn't help but snort coldly when she saw the situation. She runs pretty fast. But it's nothing supernatural. Dare to act willfully in front of me. Pax, you guys stay at home. Even if I have to dig 3 feet into the ground, I will find that female ghost. As her voice fell, the figure of the hemp-clad Granny disappeared on the spot. And at this moment, the frightened Alice threw herself into the arms of Deaf Granny, crying and pouring out her heart. Deaf Granny replied with a kind and comforting expression on her face. Good child, it's all right, it's all right. Pax on the side saw that Deaf Granny and hemp-clad Granny had both returned but looked very puzzled. Granny, has the issue of the weasel immortal been resolved? Upon hearing this, Deaf Granny simply smiled faintly. With the immortal mediating the conflict, it has been temporarily appeased. Upon hearing Deaf Granny's response, Pax became even more puzzled. Wasn't the only immortal you went with 8th Master? How could he have such abilities? Suddenly, a sound of footsteps was heard. Who do you think you are looking down on? Although I'm not the one resolving this issue this time, I'm the one who brought them here. My current family head is also my big brother. The man in white standing next to Roman coughed slightly upon hearing this. Seeing this scene, Pax was incredulous. Roman looked sickly. Does he really have the ability to settle this matter? And they don't look at all like real brothers, especially him and the 8th Master. Upon hearing this, 8th Master immediately flew into a rage. Who are you referring to? On the other hand, Roman smiled and said, My little brother is not very capable, and has made Pax laugh. But he hadn't finished speaking. Roman suddenly noticed the dragon scales on Pax's body. After a brief cough, he questioned Connor about how Pax could have the ancestral dragon scales. 8th Master just scratched his head, looking embarrassed. How could it be dragon scales? Big brother, are you mistaken? I clearly provided him with the molt of a flood dragon. Upon hearing this, Roman's eyes flashed with a cold light as he was about to get angry. But he suddenly noticed the earring on Pax's left ear, which was given by the Snow Corps General. It seemed like he thought of something. His attitude suddenly made a 180-degree change. Connor, you did a good job on this. This left 8th Master dumbfounded. Big brother's temper changes from happy to angry in a flash. He thought he was going to be lectured, but now he's praising me instead. It's really hard to figure out what's on his mind. At this moment, Deaf Granny came out of the house, carrying a stool. Thanks to the dragon skin brought by 8th Master, it saved my grandson's life. Then she gently placed the stool down. Roman, please have a seat. Your family is our family's great benefactor. Seeing this, Roman repeatedly waved his hand. Pine Grandpa is here. How can I dare to sit down? In fact, Roman came to visit today. He wanted to tell Deaf Granny that he personally checked and confirmed that the Weasel Immortal's body was indeed harmed by a ghost. The only one nearby with such cultivation level is the ghost Immortal Hempclad Granny. Deaf Granny couldn't help but frown upon hearing Roman's words. Could it be that he came to investigate and hold someone accountable? And this Roman is the head of the family in this generation. Spiritual cultivation is profound, mainly in charge of life and death. If he insists on standing up for the Yellow family, then the elder sister will be in danger. Upon thinking about this, Deaf Granny hurriedly spoke up to explain. Roman Hempclad Granny has always been bold and daring. If she really killed the Weasel Immortal, why would she go looking for trouble with the Yellow family in the mountains? But before Deaf Granny could finish speaking, 8 red-clothed female ghosts suddenly appeared carrying a sedan chair from nowhere. Hempclad Granny's voice came from the sedan chair. Big sister still knows me best, Roman. I promise I didn't harm that little yellow weasel. But if the Yellow family wants to fight, I'll accompany them to the end. After speaking, a powerful ghostly aura erupted from Hempclad Granny's body. Seeing Hempclad Granny's firm attitude, Roman also knows that there may be a misunderstanding in this matter. But after 3 days, Fox, Yellow, White, Willow, and Gray, the 5 great immortals. They will then form an alliance to attack Hempclad Mountain. They want Hempclad Granny to pay with her own blood. And his original intention on this trip was to forcefully take away the 8th Master. And he also intends to remove Deaf Granny from her position of worshipping the 4 pillars and 8 columns of the immortals at the hall. But when he saw the earring that Snow Corpse General gave to Pax's left ear, as well as the large pine tree in the courtyard, he immediately changed his mind. Upon hearing this, Hempclad Granny just smiled and said, "If the 5 great immortals come to attack, then so be it. I want to see if they have the ability." Seeing Hempclad Granny being so irritable, Roman gave a dry cough and said, "Please stay calm. It's better to resolve misunderstandings rather than to create enemies. There is still room to handle this situation peacefully." Deaf Granny standing aside heard that the situation could be turned around. She immediately looked delighted. Could it be that Roman has a solution? Roman just smiled faintly. "Yes, I came this time specifically to help both parties completely resolve the misunderstanding. But if the real culprit is not caught in one day, Granny will not be able to clear herself. I still have some influence with Immortal. Why not go into the mountains with me, Granny, and talk things out face to face? Granny, you can rest assured that no matter what the outcome is, I will make sure to safely return you unharmed." Upon hearing this, Hempclad Granny closed her eyes slightly, as if pondering something. Then she slowly opened her eyes and stared at Roman. "Don't think I can't see through you. You are being suppressed by Snow Corpse General and Pine Grandpa. But since you have this intention, I'll go with you, why not? In that case, let's head out now." But before he could finish speaking, Roman suddenly coughed heavily. Pax hurried forward to support him. "Roman, have you ever been seriously injured?" "Injured in the heart and lungs." Upon hearing this, Roman was full of astonishment. He looked at Pax. "Do you understand medicine?" But before Pax could answer, 8th Master started boasting. "Pax is really amazing. At 5 years old, he not only cured the epidemic in the village, but also delivered babies." This made Pax look embarrassed. "Roman, don't listen to 8th Master's nonsense. I just prescribed some medicine for my aunt, that's all. I have never delivered a baby." Roman also knows 8th Master's personality. But he has turned into a flood dragon 100 years ago, the root of the illness left behind after the failure. He has visited many renowned doctors, but none of them were able to cure him. Does Pax have a solution? Upon hearing this, Pax first took Roman's pulse. He sensed a surge of thunder and fire energy running rampant in Roman's body, disrupting his meridians. He immediately looked at Roman with a worried expression on his face. There is a way. It's just that this method may endanger Roman's life. After listening, Roman's face showed a serious expression. But there was a hint of unwillingness in his eyes.